Good evening, everybody. All those outside and those who watch us online, we've invited you here tonight to present you the results of the survey, the citizen survey that we did about the renewal of the center of Schuttrange. Unfortunately, we couldn't do the workshops that we planned, and that's why we did these surveys. Also, I would like to thank all of those who contributed and participated. It has shown us that the people of Schuttrange are interested of how their village will look in the future. I will pass the word to Mr. Michel Agostini and Mr. Christian Santer, who've worked on this survey and on the results. I will pass the word to you directly to present the results of the survey. Good evening from our side. As the mayor said, we had the big online presentation on the 22nd of April, where we showed the 3 projects. And then we had the survey that we'd worked on together with the responsible people of the administration. And then as we presented on the 22nd, we are here again to show you the results of what a citizen said on the survey. I'd like to quickly move on to, we have over 160 slides, so we have a lot to go through. So in the beginning we asked some general questions that were specifically to get an idea of who filled in the questionnaire, the survey, and we divided people into some categories. So the first big point that we have to say, we sent out over 4,000 questionnaires, and we had 600 that came back. So it's a 15% of people who participated, which we think is quite high. We were quite surprised at how many people participated. As for the ages, you can see them here. 18 people under 18. Well, the minimum age to participate was 16, so from 16 and 18 people, we had 18 people who participated. And then in the age group of 18 to 30, we had 64 people. In 31 to 34 years, we had 163 participants. Between 46 and 60, we had 172 participants. And then in people over 60, we had 152 people who participated. We made these categories just so that we could filter a bit later on and to have an idea what is more important for at each specific age. We also asked the genders. We had a few more women than men, but almost it was almost even, the participation between men and women. The first question we asked is, how often do you use public transport? 86 people do this daily, less than 3 times a week. We had 109 people. 168 people said less than 3 times a month. 173 people said less than 3 times a year. And about 66 people said they would never use it. We also asked, how often do you use the bike? And you can see it on this slide. 45 daily, 115 people less than 3 times a week. 144 less than 3 times a month, 110 less than 3 times a year, and then 170 people never use the bike. How do you move around inside your village was the next question. 326 people use the car still today, only 10 people public transport, 54 use the bike, and 182 walk, and then 13 people have never been to the center of the village. The next question was, when it's not COVID times, how often do you come into the center? So 75 people said they come daily, 143 less than 3 times a week, 229 less than 3 times a month, 117 less than 3 times a year, and 21 people said they never go into the center of Schuttrange. We asked people, the next question was whether they are in the Club de Jeunes or in the Scouts, Les Castors. This is because we had questions on their new localities for these. We wanted to know whether people actually use these clubs. So we had 14 people who are in the Club de Jeunes now, and people who used to be. There's 10 people used to be in the Club de Jeunes, and the same with the Scouts. 36 people were involved in the Scouts now, and 18 people used to be in the Scouts. Then we asked about the church in Schuttrange. We had 18 people who said they regularly go to church, this church. 82 people said at times, 167 people said not very often, and 278 people said never. They would never go to the church in Schuttrange. We asked also about the cemetery. 19 people regularly visit our cemetery, 53 people occasionally, 104 people not very often, and 378 people never visit our cemetery. And then we had some other general questions to the buildings, and we've kept those the same for the 3 projects. When it comes to the urban planning, we asked how important to you would be the integration of a maison médicale in the new city center, and a great majority of people said that they thought that was a good idea. 292 people said that it was very well resolved. 183 people said they thought it was well resolved. 82 people were neutral. There was only 14 people who said it was not well resolved, and only 12 people said it was really not very well resolved, this issue. Then the weekly or monthly market. How important would be the integration of a weekly or monthly market on the new village square? 333 people said that was an excellent idea. 173 thought it was good. 59 people were neutral. 10 thought it was rather not so well thought out, and 9 people said they thought it was extremely not well thought out. The next question is how important is it for you that our village center is revived, becomes more alive? 203 people said it was very important. 228 people said it was important. 108 people were neutral. 32 people thought it was not so important, and 12 people thought it was unimportant. Then we asked about the village square and whether it should, in the future, be car-free. 223 people said yes, definitely. 141 people said it's a good decision. 120 people were neutral. 54 people thought it was rather not so well thought out, and 43 people thought it was a bad idea. Those are probably people who use their cars in the village center. Then there was the concept on short-term parking and the underground parking. We asked how people thought about that, and you can see on the slide 208 people thought it was a good idea, and you can go down the numbers and see that only 23 people thought it was not such a good idea. Then we'll go into the three specific projects and the questions that we asked about them, which my colleague will explain to you. Well, we'll come to the first project. It's the project from Metafarm. And we've made categories which you will see in all the presentations. So that first we go into urban planning, and then the actual buildings, and then mobility, and finally the use of public space and environmental quality. And it follows the same process as the actual survey that we handed out. So with Metafarm, their project goes on 3 places and on more levels. So you can see that a great majority of people think that the dimension of the village square in this project is exactly right. 325 people said this. There are some people who think it's too big and 110 who thought it was too small. But then we filtered, and you'll see this a few times. If there is a green box at the top, then on the right, then there is a filter. So here we ask people who at least spend 3 times a week in the village. We're really interested to know people's opinions of those people who actually visit the village center. And here you can see again that most people think it's exactly right. 22 people, and then 14 people thought it was too big, and 11 thought it was too small. Then we asked people whether they thought the village square inviting as it is now. 125 people said it was very good. 227 said it was still quite good. And then about 110 people accumulated think it is not so well thought out. And then people could write their comments. We wanted to get some input from people, so we've tried to condense the text of the things that people wrote in so that we can read it and that we can quantify it as well, some of those comments that come back. So we have 2 people who asked to have passageway for people with reduced mobility. 1 person who said a weekly market. 19 people would like to see more trees and more greenery. 1 person would like to see a sports space. 4 people want a car-free zone, which at least in the village square is the case in this project. 6 people would like to see some water somewhere. 11 people would like to see a playground, which is actually planned in this project on the bottom right. And then 5 people would like to see some restaurants integrated. Then we asked people whether this square with the functions that lie around it, like the culture house, the medical center, whether those are enough to enliven this square. And we always try to get quite specific, asking a question that's the next question about the different levels, whether people liked the fact that this plan goes on a specific level. And quite a lot of people thought it was a good idea, and not so many people thought it wasn't well thought out. And again, here people could write their text, and then it repeats itself a little bit. People would like to see more trees, space for people with reduced mobility, more terraces and restaurants, the integration of a market, the integration of a parking garage, and subterranean parking garage, and but most people think it is well thought out. The next question was on the creation of a communal space for the Scouts and the Club de Jeunes. We wondered, what do actually the members of these 2 clubs think? And you can see this in the next slide. That is quite a mixed picture, where the Scouts, a lot of the members of the Scouts think it is a good idea, whereas the Club de Jeunes also mostly think it's a good idea, but there are some people in the Scouts who think it's a bad idea and who would prefer to see a clearer division between the Club de Jeunes and the Scouts' home. And then we allowed some texts. Also, you can see that there is 5 people who think the Scouts should find a place outside the village center. And then people would say that the Scouts and the Club de Jeunes have different interests. One person thought there should be a more central place for the Scouts chalet. One person thought it was good, and then two people thought that the place is too close to the train rails. So then when we filtered it to see which are the comments that come from the Club de Jeunes and from the Scouts, well, the person who thinks that it's important that there is mobility for passage with people of reduced mobility, and this came from the Scouts or from one person who is a Scout. You can see the different interests in this next slide. Then when it comes to where the buildings are placed and also the cemetery, no, not the cemetery, yes, the cemetery. Most people think the church and the cemetery is well integrated in the concepts. And you can see in the filter that the people who go to church at least 3 times a week also find that it is well integrated. And again, the people who go to the cemetery, the same, you can find that they are happy with this project. The same with the morgue, and it wasn't a surprise that we found the same opinions. Then the Club de Jeunes, more specifically, whether it is in the right place. It's where it is now at the moment in the old building in this project, and the members who are members nowadays are happy about this. They think it's a good idea, and also the majority of those who were members before, they think it's a good thing that the Club de Jeunes would like to stay there. Only 2 people think it's not a good idea. Then again, we looked at the different ideas of the Club de Jeunes. Well, there should be more trees. There should be a division between the Club de Jeunes and the Scouts' home. And so we put a filter on this, and we saw that the members of the Club de Jeunes, there were some that say they would like to see it outside the village, and again, other people thought it was important that there was a division between the Club de Jeunes and the Scouts' home. When it comes to the living space, we asked people how they saw the integration of the living space in the concept. Most people see this quite positive, 120 and 222 respectively. And if you look and you filter this for age, then you can see that they're actually close together, the ages. You see that the top bar here is under 18, the next one is 18 to 30 years of age, then 31 to 45, etc. So there's no very big variations in this diagram. And then we asked people again to give us their comments. So one person said that the culture house should be in the north, which at least one of the projects suggested, but it's a project that wasn't kept by the jury. And then we have 3 people who said they would like to see more living space. Then there are 2 people who think that the living space is too close to the train rails. And then there is 15 people who would like to see less living spaces or housing or none at all. We analyzed the Scouts chalet as well. Generally, people think it's quite positive to put them in this place close to the fire brigade. And if it's filtered for people who were members or are or were members, you can see that some think it's a good idea and others don't on this next slide. So here we asked again for people to give their comments. And again, we get these answers that there should be division between the Club de Jeunes and the Scouts. The Scouts are supposed to be in nature. 6 people said this. One person said that there should be more publicity for the Scout Chalet. One person said the Scout Chalet is too small. One person said that there should be more central place for the Scout Chalet. 2 people think the place is good, and one person thinks that the train will make too much noise in this current placement. And the ways to improve the position of the Scouts Chalet, you can see on this next slide, and they're the same kind of comments. When it comes to the Maison de la Culture, a culture house, you can see that 330 people altogether think that the placement of the Maison de la Culture is good, and then altogether about 130 people think that it's not such a good place. When it comes to the architecture of the Maison de la Culture, we have about 310 people who think it's architecturally sound or interesting, and then around 115 who don't think the architecture is so interesting. And then again, we got some comments. One person said it looks like it might be very cost intensive, so it might get very expensive. One person says there should be a space for celebrations, which is actually there. One person said it should be modern. 2 people said there should be a playground close by. 4 people think there should be a restaurant or a terrace in this culture house. 6 people think that it takes away too much space of the village square. One person thinks it's good as well integrated in this project, and one person thinks that this is more a place that should have living space, so housing. Then we come to mobility and traffic. Here we asked people if the passages for the cycle paths which are thought out, whether they connect well with the rest of the village. And of course, we have to know that the village center can't solve all the problems that there might be with cycle paths, but at least in this reduced space, it can be either well or not well organized. And here we asked specifically with a filter the people who use the bike at least 3 times a week. And here you can see that it's more a positive opinion of how it is resolved in this project. The next is about pedestrians and the connection to the rest of the village, whether it's well integrated. And then we asked an interesting question, people, how would you in the future move in this future village? So in the dark blue, you can see how people move now, what their mobility is now, and the light blue is what they will do. And people want to use the car less and want to use the bike less, use the bus less, and more by bike. And 3 people who never would go to the village center now would like to go, and that's as far as we've gone on mobility. Then, as in environmental quality, we have a rather positive feedback in general for this concept. About 360 people say that this fits quite well in terms of architecture with the public space and the environmental quality. And then there was a question whether this concept has enough green spaces, and quite a lot of people think, almost 400 people think that there is enough green spaces in this particular project, and around 110 people who don't think so. And then we asked people, and this one is a question specific for this project, because there is an urban garden foreseen in this project. And we asked people about this, and a large portion of people think this is positive. Around 340 people think it's a good thing that there would be this urban garden. And around 100 people think it's less interesting. And then we asked in general if people have observations, and here we see 3 people think that community gardens are unnecessary. 3 people think that they should be placed rather outside the village square. 3 people think there's not enough green areas. 1 person think the culture house should not be in the center of the village. 1 person think the speed should be reduced, the maximum speed. 1 person think that there's not enough bike path connections. 1 person thinks that community gardens should be more central. 1 person thinks that dogs should not be allowed in this village center. And 1 person thinks that the community gardens were well integrated. So we've really tried to give the same treatment to the 3 projects, but we did ask some specific questions on specific projects. Now we come to the next project from ARGE-KL, Larouade and Ernst and Partner, who came together to write out this project. We'll begin again with the central and the urban planning. And here you can see that 340 people think that the space is well dimensioned. 44 people think it's too small, 124 think it's too large rather, 124 too small. And then we asked again those people who actually do visit the village center about the dimension, and a great majority of people thought it was well resolved in this project. Then we asked people whether it was inviting. And again, a majority of the people thought that it was inviting, with about 340 people who see it that way, and about 120 people who don't think it's so well resolved. And this is, what do people want? Again, people answer the same. They want to see more green and more trees. They want a smaller culture house. They would like to see sport or fitness equipment, a car-free zone, and an underground parking. 1 person thinks there should be an entrance for the fire brigade. 2 people would like to see a playground, and 7 people would like to see restaurants integrated in this project. And then we asked people whether the city or the village center would become alive enough with the functions of the culture house and the centre médical. Again. And then we have a specific question for this project, and it's the Belvedere, which would be a parking garage which attracts all the traffic there, so that people would park there and then move around. And on the roof of this Belvedere, there would be a terrace where events could happen, and it would be like an annex of the local administration. And a lot of people are happy about this solution. 141 people thought it was a very good idea. 188 people thought it was well thought out, and only between brackets 50 people thought this was not a good idea. And then we got the comments of people. 2 people think it's not such a good idea, this Belvedere. 2 people say, well, even if you have a parking garage, that doesn't stop traffic. 1 person thinks there would be too much noise from the train rails. 2 people thought the Belvedere is a good idea, and 1 person thought that this would not really have such a big impact on the center of the village. Then, as to where the buildings would be, and also the cemetery be. Most people agree and think it's well integrated. The same with people who go to church. And the morgue, again, people are rather in favor of this proposal. Then when we come to the Club de Jeunes, which would come to the Accueil, where it is now, about 230 people think it's a positive thing, 110 people think it's not so good. And if you then put a filter in and you look, what are those members and former members of the Club de Jeunes, what is their idea, then you can see that there is just as many people who are a member now who think it's a good idea than those who think it's a bad idea. So, and in the same of people who used to be a member, you have 5 people in favor and 5 people against, then you can really see, and then some people don't have any opinion at all. So that's the vision that we get about putting the Club de Jeunes in the Accueil. Then the specific opinions to the Club de Jeunes. Well, 5 people would like to see it outside the center. 1 person would like to see more activities, music and dance and lessons in a skate park. 4 people would like to see a terrace where the Club de Jeunes is, and we have 2 people who think that the integration of the Club de Jeunes is good where it is. And then if you look at the former members or actual members, well, 1 member would like to see some dancing classes, and 1 member thinks that it's well integrated. Then the integration of the housing, 290 people think that the housing is in the right place. You can see here on the right that it's in the north, and the other picture is in the west. And then here we looked again the differences in age, and you can see that there is similar response on the integration, but the ages 18 to 30 and okay. You have to think that there's about 30 people or 30% who didn't have an opinion, and 20% think it's a bad integration, and most of the others thought it was good. And then the comments that we had, 4 people think that the housing should be outside of the village center. 1 person thought there's too much noise from the train tracks. 8 people think there should not be any housing, and 1 person thought it was well integrated, the housing in the village center in this project. And then the scouts, here they would be behind, not far from where they are now, behind the communal administration, and the majority of people think that this is a positive thing. And then if you look at the members, respectively the former members of the Scouts, then you see that there is a rather positive opinion on placing the Scouts home there, and that there is not many actual members and former members who don't think the Scouts home should be placed there. And then when we asked about the buildings, we again have 1 person who thinks that the Scouts chalet and the Club de Jeunes should be divided. 3 people think the Scouts chalet should be outside the village. 1 person thinks it's too small. 2 people think there needs to be a pedestrian zone for the weekly market. 2 people think there should be a more central place for the Scout chalet. 1 person thinks it's a good place, and 4 people think the Scout Chalet is too close to the train tracks. And again, if we put the filter here, we saw that 2 former members think the Scout Chalet should be outside the village. 1 who's an actual member thinks it's too small. And 3 people thought it was too close to the train tracks. Then in the next slide, you can see that about 300 people think that the culture house is in a good place in this proposal. 126 are neutral. And then about 140 people think that this is not such a good place for the culture house in this proposal. About the architecture of the culture house, roughly 300 people think it's positive architectural design. About 150 people don't really have an opinion, and about 110 people think it is not such a nice architectural design. In the comments, we had 1 person again who said that it looks like it's going to be expensive. 1 person says it's too far away from the parking place. 3 people want a playground. 3 people would like to see restaurants and terraces. 12 people think that the culture house takes too much space away from the village square. 3 people think it's well integrated, and 2 people think that this is where there should be living space. Then when it comes to mobility and traffic, the bicycle connections seem to be well resolved, or people believe so, and the same with people who actually use the bikes, and the same is true for the pedestrian ways. And then we had a specific solution in this project. It's this Tempo 20 to Tempo 30 zones, which is supposed to calm traffic on this place. And people are quite positive about this, with almost 400 people who think that that is a good idea, that we should have traffic calming measures in that spot. And similar to the last proposal, it seems like when we ask people about their future use, people are looking into getting into soft mobility more in the future. And then when it comes to public spaces and environmental quality, about around 110 people think that this concept doesn't really fit into the village. 136 people don't have an opinion, and most people thought it would fit well. There is a large majority of people who think that this proposal has enough green spaces. And that's it for this project. And then we would go to point number 5, which is the Balinese pit proposal. I'll begin again with the urban placement. We have 350 people who think that the village square is in the right spot. 108 people think it's too small, and 40 people think it's too big. The people who actually come to the village often, I think those numbers are wrong. Yes, it should be more. But when we send you the presentation, we will make sure to send you the correct numbers. The next question was whether the village square is inviting in this proposal. And about 220 people think it is so, and about 110 people think it's not inviting. And then we got comments for this proposal too. And they're similar to, I suppose it's the same people who comment on the 3 proposals. So the answers are the same. People want more greenery. The culture house should be outside the village. One person says that it's fine as it is. Actually, at the moment, people want sport and fitness material. 2 people want a car-free zone. 3 people want water to be involved in this concept. 3 people want to see a playground, and 2 people want more restaurants. So the question whether, if there are enough functions, like the Maison de la Culture and the Centre Médical, to enliven the village, well, most people agree that it is enough. And then here, on this project, you have a place which is created in the bottom, but it's not like in the first project where it gets specifically designed for the Club de Jeunes and the Scouts. Here again, you see that it's that people are generally in favor of this. And if you look at the comments of people, then you see that people are actually thinking that the Scout chalet should be outside the village center, that there should be more greenery, that there should be a division between the Club de Jeunes and the Scouts, that the Scouts chalet should be in more central space, one person thought. One person thinks it's in a good place, and then we've heard again that 2 people think the Scouts chalet is too close to the train rails. And then if we looked at the actual members of the Club de Jeunes and the Scouts, then we think that 4 people of the Club de Jeunes and 1 from the Scouts think there should be a division between the club and the Scouts, and 2 people from the Scouts think it's too close to the train rails, and 1 Scout would like to see the chalet in a more central place. Then in the next question, whether the creation of a communal place for the Scouts and the Club de Jeunes is good, you see that there is a majority who are in favor of this proposal. And then we come to the placement of the specific buildings and the cemetery, similar to in the other 2 projects. And I'll go quickly because of it. The church is quite well integrated. The same is true for the people who actually go to church. When it comes to the cemetery, people are rather in favor, and the same for the people who actually visit the cemetery. With the morgue, it's a similar picture. Then we come to the Club des Jeunes, who would be placed in where where currently the fire brigade is, and about 260 people think that's positive. And then if you look at the filter for the members, you'll find that the members of the Club des Jeunes, 5 people are in favor, 9 are neutral, 1 is against. So you see a similar picture with the former members of the Club des Jeunes. And then when we ask what could be improved in the concept for the Club des Jeunes, we'd have similar answers: more green areas, the integration of more activities, music and dancing, skate park. 1 person would like to see a terrace, and 2 people who thought it was in a good place. And there's basically 1 member of the Club des Jeunes who really thinks there should be more greenery in that area. Then the integration of the housing. About 250 people think that these housing, so the 2 units of housing in the north and the ones in the west, there's 250 people who think that is positive, and then 130 people who aren't so happy about it. So it's quite a mixed response. And here, if you look at the ages, when it comes to the integration of this housing, it's quite a mixed response. What's important to know is that this is the proposal that looks at the most living spaces, and the people under 18, over 70% of people under 18 think that it is a good idea, and then the 18 to 30, it goes up to 55%. And then the category who thinks this is least good is the people between 31 and 45 years old. There's only about 40% roughly who think this is good. And then it goes up again in the age bracket of 46 to 60. And then the people over 60s, you will have a majority of people who think that this is well resolved. So in the comments, there's 2 people who would like to see the housing more central, 2 people think it's too close to the cemetery, 3 people think living space should be constructed outside the village square, and 4 people think there should be less or no housing built in the village square center. Then when it comes to the scouts, because here it would be newly built but stay in the same place, the scout chalet. So around 190 people think that this is in the right place. But then we have a very large group of people who don't have an opinion on this, 267. And then about 30 people think it's not in a good space. Now, if you look at the actual members, you'll see that from the actual members, there's 8 people who think it's in a good place, and 7 think it is not good, and 7 don't have an opinion on this. And then from the former members, 10 people think it's good, and 3 think it's not good, and 8 have no opinion. And then there's a similar picture for the division of the Club de Gênes and the Scout Chalet. 5 people think the chalet should be outside the village. 7 people think the Scout Chalet is too small, and 1 person is happy with the placement of the Scout Chalet. And then when we asked the members, 2 people think it should be outside the village, and 3 people think it is too small. Then the culture house, Maison de la Culture. Roughly 400 people believe that it is put in the right position. 134 people have no opinion, and roughly 130 people think it's not well resolved to put it in the place as it is in this project. And then as to the architectural design, roughly 330 people think that the architecture is good for this proposal, and roughly 140 people think it is not architecturally interesting. What are the comments? Well, again, we want a terrace or a restaurant, 4 people said. 3 people think that the culture house should be in a different position, in a different spot. And 2 people think that the culture house is well integrated. Then when it comes to mobility and traffic, large majority of people think that it is well connected for bicycle connections and similar for pedestrian ways. And so it's welcomed that there are connections made with other places in the village. And here is an interesting picture again, where people are saying they want to use the car less. And here it's turned around, so less people want to use less public transport, but they want to walk more in this project. And then we come to the last category, which is the free spaces, free public spaces and environmental impact. A large majority of people think that this proposal resolves this well, almost 500 people who are of this opinion. And then roughly 90 people who don't agree. And then here when it comes to the green areas provided, a large majority of people think that it is just about enough green areas, and a minority of 110 people don't think so. When it comes, and this project also has a community garden, and a large majority of people think it's a good thing to integrate this in here, with about 500 people seeing it that way, and about 70 people who wouldn't agree. And we got a few comments again to the community garden. One person says it should be outside the village center. 2 people think there's enough green areas. 2 people want to see more restaurants. 1 person thinks that the traffic needs to be calmed on the road. 1 person thinks there is not enough connections for bike paths. 1 person thinks that the community garden should be more central. 1 person thinks dogs should be forbidden here. And 4 people think that community gardens are well integrated in this proposal. So we'll come to the last category. And I will pass the word to Christian, who will tell us about the comparison between these 3 proposals. So we've looked for a few categories, how, if you compare them side to side, how people see them. So here's the 3 projects that we're talking about. You see the names there, and then the first question that we asked is, if you compare these, whether people believe that the place of the Maison de la Culture is well chosen, and you look into, there is not much difference between the 3 proposals. Metafarm has got 392. That's the project where the Maison de la Culture was on the other side of the road. So most people think that it is good, and where people say that it's not well resolved, there's not much difference either between the 3 projects. Then we put a filter on this. We wanted to know how young people see it this. So we put a filter for people under 30 years of age. How do they compare the different projects? Because we said, well, this is something that we're building for the future young generation, so it's interesting to look into their opinion. And here we see again that the Metafarm project got more votes in terms of having resolved the space for the Maison de la Culture well, but also in the category of where people say it's not well resolved. And the other 2 projects are quite close. We've also looked at the other ages, and there you don't see as much variation between the 3. And in this younger group is where you can see more of a difference, where one stands out more. Then when we looked at the actual architecture of the Maison de la Culture, and here again you see that the 3 projects are seen in a similar way. And if we filter this again for people under 30 people, it confirms the picture we had in the first filter. Here again, Metafarm is the one that more often was seen as the proposal that solved this question well, but quickly followed up by Argekel, Laroide Ernst & Partner, and Balinese. And then there was the question specific about the housing. We wanted to compare that. How do the 3 projects, seen in terms of how they deal with the housing? And again, the 3 projects don't get a much difference in opinions. The same in those in people saying that they have resolved it very well and people they resolved it very badly. And if we put the filter on it again for people under 30 years, then you can definitely see that in very well resolved, Metafarm has an advantage, and in badly resolved, Metafarm was clicked a little bit less, but not that there is a huge difference. And then we compared when the question about the village center, whether it was inviting. Here again, you see that the three proposals aren't very different. You can see Metafarm 395 for very well resolved. Arge Kel 384 and Balinese 370. Those aren't very big differences. And it's the same for badly or very badly resolved. There isn't much difference in the answers. And we put a filter on this again for people who are under 30. And here now we can see that maybe Arge Kel, Lawad and Son Partner, we had 82 people who said that they resolved this very well. More than Metafarm and Balinese Pit, who got 70 and 41 for Balinese Pit. If you look at badly resolved, you see that Metafarm has the most votes for badly resolved with 27, but then Arge and Balinese Pit go down from 25 and 20, so there's not such a big difference. Then with the question whether the Club de Jeunes is on the right spot, and that's if we looked at people who are in the Club de Jeunes at the moment, because we think they're the ones that are going to be using this space, we could see that the Metafarm proposal was seen as the most the better one. 11 people thought so. With Balinese Pit, it was 7 people, and that's where it would be in the fire, in where the actual fire brigade is. And then the 5 people, only 5 people thought that it should be in where the actual communal administration is. When it comes to the scouts, Shally, whether that's in the right spot, we've put a filter on this again for the people who are currently members of the scouts. And there the preference is if you look at the one from Metafarm in the current fire brigade, that's 13 people. The one of Arge and Keil, that's the one behind the current, that places them behind the current communal administration. There was 11 people who thought it was good, and only 8 people thought it was well placed in the last project. So that's really the results of the survey. I hope we were able to give you a quite complete picture of what the survey came up with. I wanted to answer the question of how this is going to be continued. This is citizens' an opinion that the citizens have given us on these projects, and of course we take this opinion into account in the first colloquium we have with the jury. Of course the jury has looked at this, but they will also get this document, and then the jury can take this into account. On the 19th and the 20th will be the colloquium of the jury. And we want to do this before the summer break so that the offices, the 3 project proposers, can work on these projects over the summer, so that in September, before September, they can do some adjustments to their projects. And then beginning of October, we should get the renewed projects that they've worked on with the comments of the jury, which will then again be seen by the jury to make sure that the comments were integrated, or the observations that were made. And from there, we will consult the citizens again. We'll have to see what will be possible around that time in terms of the measures of Corona. It's very difficult to say at the moment what we can do in October, unfortunately. And then from then, we will do another colloquium where the proposals will again, or the bureaus will be told again of any further comments. And then there's going to be a final colloquium with the winning. The decision will be made in the final colloquium who is the winner of this urban project. So who will actually win this tender, as it was. And then I think we are opening for questions, if there would be questions. Well, like I say, thank you for you, firstly, for this work that wasn't very complicated. I think we were all quite surprised by the success of the survey, and it was a lot of work to go through this and to present it in such a nice way here. And anyone who has questions about this, about the questionnaire or the results, this is the time to ask them. And then we can go into the opinions of the different fractions of the commune. There's one question. Yes, I have a few questions. We saw this presentation today. We have not been able to actually go through it before, so it's quite spontaneous. Something I didn't have a questionnaire to look into it, but which I wonder where the people are from who answer the questionnaire. Is it people from Münspach, from Schuttrange, or from Neuhausen? It would be quite different how they saw things and whether the questionnaire went into that difference. No, that's not been looked into. On the one side, the philosophy is that this would be a village center for Schuttrange, for the commune of Schuttrange, so we didn't want to split it up. And if we had done this, I think in Neuhausen there's not a lot of people who live there, then we might have made the circle so small that you could almost find in the survey which person answered the questionnaire, and specifically if you go into gender and then age, and are they a member or not, then I could really bring back the survey to a specific person, so know who answered what, and that's something that we didn't want to, and that's why one of the reasons why we didn't ask people which village they came from, because this should be a village center for all of the citizens of Schuttrange, of the commune of Schuttrange, the municipality. Well, I don't think Neuhausen is quite so small, but okay, I'll get to the next question. There's a lot of questions about the Club des Jeunes and about the Scouts chalet. Again, here it would be interesting to see how many members the Club des Jeunes has and how many members the Scouts have. It's difficult to compare nominally, as it was. And also the culture center, there is a large part of it will be for the music associations, and that's something that we've not looked into here. So a survey that's thought for the public talks about 2 associations and leaves one completely by the side. Of course, Well, we didn't. Was there a dialogue with the different associations? Because then the associations could have seen with their members what their collective opinions were. In terms of the Maison de la Culture, I think there was a whole consultation before, which started 2016 or finished 2016 from consultants who had a very intensive exchange about the usage of the house, to see how many square meters each room needs to have and what they technically need to have. So those are the things that were given for the different proposals to work with. So, and we had meetings last week with the Music Association, and there is a report of this meeting, which of course everybody who went to the meeting will get, because we've been asked to adapt one room, which was meant to have 130 square meters, and it's supposed to go up to 200 square meters. That's something that was asked for afterwards. So where we know less, for the new buildings, the Club de Jeunes and the Scouts Chalet, we never really looked into those in the past. So what was interesting with this questionnaire is, what do the members want? And 2 weeks ago we met with the Scouts, and what the Scouts leadership told us doesn't really correlate with what we got from the members in this questionnaire, and you will get the report of that meeting also, and you'll be able to compare. So for us, as the support of the jury to make conclusions, draw conclusions here, that's what the jury will have to do, to see which considerations from this consultation, but also from the meeting that we've had, should be integrated in the decision on the proposals. I think we said from the beginning all here that the Club de Jeunes has a very special building, and we've always asked the question from the beginning, does the Club de Jeunes actually want something different? Music, of course, will go into the Centre Culturel, and they want the square meters, but the Club de Jeunes is a very specific situation here in the village, and I think that's why it's important that we ask this. Ask the members for their ideas. And also, in terms of the Scouts, they will have a lot of space in the perimeter that we're planning, and it was important to know, because there used to be discussions that the Scouts should completely leave there, but they have said that they do want to be there and that they somehow function together there. And it was important that we go a bit more into detail, because the practicalities of them, and specifically the 3 different projects, had very different concept for the Scouts and for the Club de Jeunes. One put them together, one integrated the Scouts in nature, and another one put it in where the fire brigade is now. They're very different concepts, and that's why it was important to get the opinions of the people. Of course, we didn't just ask them. We asked everyone their opinion, but then we filtered them out. And with the music, as the mayor has said, the Centre Culturel, whether they are on one side of the road or on the other, that's not such a big difference for them. Maybe just a precision question. These reports will be made public? The reports are sent to the jury members. That's what was decided today. I can't tell you whether they will be made public or not. Well, that's of course something that we are sad about, because the jury gets reports which haven't been presented or seen here in the community, in the council of the municipality or the public of the municipality. So that some of the information isn't made public. So are we talking about the two reports of the interview with the music and the scouts? Yes, in general, all the documents that are given to the jury to make these decisions. Well, of course, those two reports, we have no problem to give them to the councillors. For the rest, I think there is a procedure what the jury gets, and you, as council members, you also got the report of the jury. I think making it public is something different, but of course the council is informed, and of course all the fractions in the community council have that information. But we have a jury with experts who will get the information of this citizen survey, and of course the fractions will also have to say how they stand to the proposals, and the jury will have the work. And again, in this jury, all political fractions are represented in the jury. So of course the information that we give to the three participants is important. And when it comes to housing as well, I think it's important that everybody around the table here has for a position, what their positions are when it comes to housing. So the idea is not that we have a jury of experts and we do a citizen survey and then the council will just decide things on their own. No, we will, of course, give the input that we have as the community council. But what I think is really important here is that the people who participated generally think it's positive what should happen. And I think for us here around the table, it's good to know that people appreciate the project. Okay, so if there isn't any further questions, then the next point on our agenda would be the different fractions. Political representatives here should give us their opinion. We wrote to you. We asked you to provide it in written. You were the only one who did. The others will just speak and tell us theirs, and the jury will have to take this we should just go alphabetically, maybe, on the agenda. So, as representative of the CSV, I would ask you to begin. So, thank you very much for letting me speak. I just want to talk about the citizen participation. A big thank you to the members of the public who participated, and thank you very much for the team who did the analysis of the survey, and also thank you to the architect bureaus who came up with their interesting projects, which we've had presented here. So we have heard that as a next step, the result of the public consultation will be used as a basis for the next colloquium in July. to value in depth the three proposals there. We think that for this colloquium, the parties should also get some time to look at what we've been presented here today, so that together with the party members we can look at this and value this and help bring this, our input to the jury on this. The participants of the tender have we think that once the comments or the opinions of the public have been integrated into the three proposals, then the parties, political parties, should again have access to the new projects, the projects that have been redone. And generally to the whole project that we have been presented and that the jury, the three projects that the jury has kept, for us, the name alone of the church place already says it, that the church is the central place of this village. And the church of Schuttrange for us is of a central importance. It's very important for us, therefore, as well, the position of a possible centre culturel and also the dimensions of a potential centre culturel. If this centre culturel would be in the place of the church of Schuttrange, then of course it should not hinder the view on the church and would be a harmonious, it should make a harmonious picture, and we would rather see the Centre Culturel on the other side of the road so that the church square stays intact as is, with a clear view of the church of Schuttrange. For us, it would be important that if it would be on the other side of the road, what the dimensions would be. We think that the Maison de la Culture looks like it's a bit over dimensioned, so it shouldn't be too big, because it should fit in well with the rest of this place, and it shouldn't be too dominant. And the housing that are close by shouldn't be suppressed by these dominant buildings, and that the peace and quiet of the housing area shouldn't be disturbed by the activities of the Maison de la Culture. The dimensions of this Maison de la Culture should also be adapted to the real needs. And so that is something that we need to decide upon together before the choice of a project. The communal administration should also be oriented on the actual needs, so it shouldn't be over dimension, so that we should find a compromise between the projects. Some foresee more capacity, others less, which we can only see from the outside. Of course, we'd have to see the square meters and the surfaces that are behind the project. So aside the church of Schuttrange, the important buildings that need to be protected should be protected, and again should be integrated in a village square, a church square of Schuttrange. We think the Club des Jeunes in Schuttrange is important and has a specific charm, specifically for that association, the Club des Jeunes, and also because it has a historical value, which in one of the projects has really been underlined, and that's why I think it's important we keep that building and integrate it in the project. altogether, I think it's important that we find a concept that is alive and that is harmonious, and it should be centralized, and it shouldn't. We think that in some of the projects, some of the projects won't have an emphasis on the village square with the church, which is where we think the activity should be, and that you have individual activity poles. And the centralization of the activity would also help to something that I think is quite important, which is the village center in itself, with the church and with the cemetery as a calm place, so that activities don't mix too much in the same area. And then we have the concept of the mobility douce, the soft mobility. So we give importance to a car-free village center. Of course, we have to find a balance between creating parking space in the concept of a village center, which will be used, of course, if you think of the church, of masses, of burials. So we have to make sure that we can avoid too much traffic and traffic chaos when there are events. We think that a walkway in the Natura 2000 nature space, which seemed not to be possible. We'd like it to be checked in how far that could be possible. The idea of a passage underneath the rail track, underground, from the church areas to Alschütter, the old village of Schuttrange, I thought was very interesting. And then the creation of a lot of green areas with a lot of trees, and also the urban gardening has been well taken on in these projects. Housing has been talked about. Specifically, social housing is, of course, part of our vision of a village center and a center of the village. We have to agree, of course, on how much and how many houses or living space do we want to create, units do we want to create. That's something we need to agree on. And how can we bring that together with our goal of growth for our commune? And the last thing which is important to say is that it's important to look at the budget and the finances for this project, because if we want to start planning this more concretely over the next months and years, then we have to look at our multi-year funding plan. And of course, the finances of our community finances shouldn't be put to the test too much. We've seen through the pandemic and the crisis that unforeseen things can put a strain on the budget, and that other projects that the commune also wants to do shouldn't suffer from the implementation of this project. So again, a big thank you again to the citizens, to the Bureau Dresden Summer for this presentation, and also to the consultants who came up with these three projects. Thank you, Gilles, for your comment. I would like to pass the word to our colleagues of the Democratic Party and to give us their opinion. Thanks very much. Okay, so we've said it before. We as parties in December have been asked to give us our ideas to this project. We were supposed to be on the 15th of January to give in this hand in our comments. I'm a bit surprised that we were the only ones to do this. It shows how important it is for us. It's a necessity to us that this place gets redeveloped and redesigned, and we think it's very good that there is a big dialogue done so that there can be a consensus with the citizens. So our advice, or our opinion that we gave in January, well, there's been a lot of questions that have come up since then. We've had the associations which were asked, so we will have to complete our opinion anew, but we have a few general considerations that we have to give to the three bureaus who develop their projects. One is a financial project like this has a very big influence on our community finances. Through Corona, we've seen our subsidies reduce, not as much as we feared, but still, we have to make sure that we tell the three bureaus that we now need to start putting numbers to their proposals so that we know what this is going to cost. And also the phases, to whether it's possible in their project to construct a culture center first, and then later the scouts, or later a community administration buildings. We need to know in which time these phases can be carried out and what each phase will cost, so that we can really weigh off what is feasible. And we need to be able to compare it. You know, it's nice if one draws it. We need to make sure, we need to know if one of these proposals is going to cost a double of another. Those are considerations that we need to know, so that they can influence the decision. And then what's important for us in the three projects is that the concepts of ecology and circular economy should be there. There is one project that includes a lot how old buildings can be integrated in the concept that not all buildings have to be torn down and rebuilt. I think it was the first project that wrote this, and we think that it's important that a project will explain when something needs to be torn down. It needs to be explained, the arguments for this, and whether it's not possible to do this differently, and what the most environmentally friendly way of doing it would be. Then when it goes into the topography, everybody knows that the church square has a topography that goes from the road down all the way to the train track. I'm not sure if all project has seen that well. It looked quite even in some of the projects. We have to ask them for the details. Where is there going to be some stairs necessary? And of course that brings implications for the access for people with reduced mobility. And then when it comes to the underground parking on the actual church square, which of course is digging into the ground again, which might not be so environmentally friendly there again. There is a recommendation of working as much as possible with the topography of the ground, and that's something that we should put to the projects. And then, yes, as you've said, the church is a central element of our church village, and whenever there is a building on this village square, it's important to take that into account, how it fits there with the church. And the last point is about the cultural center, or where these buildings should come, where there might be a large volume of traffic, especially people coming and going, but also people who are parking. We would rather see a project that would be on the side of Hannah Thomas, because we see that quite critically, because it might be a nuisance to the people living there. For us, it would have been a project to put the Centre Culturel behind where currently the communal administration is, all the way down until where the train track is. We think that would have been a good place for. So it's kind of our invitation for all those projects, if they want to have some fundamental thoughts about their project, is to maybe think of that place for a cultural center. We would give further considerations to our advice or opinion that we already handed in and written in January with the new information that has come up now. Okay, thank you, Serge. Thanks to you as well. We always said that we would ask people and that we would ask again. We have a council meeting on the 14th. And of course, we can still give information to the colloquium for the jury then, who are meeting on the 19th and the 20th. It's important that everybody says here, honestly, I mean, it's not the council here, it's not up to the council to analyze the community survey, but everybody here has to talk about this with their fractions. And we see this as a very important opinions that the jury needs to get on the different projects. Claude, I would ask you to tell us about the position of the LSAP. Oh, the green. I'm sorry, the Greens. Green G comes before L. So Nora, so it's up to you. Okay, the Green from Schuttrange is really happy of the approach to this project. So a big thank you to the engineers, the jury, the participants from their urban concours, and all the associations and the citizens who participated, also the civil servants, and specifically the Service Technique, who did a lot of extra hours for this project, and specifically Madame Veles. This project has been transparent at any moment, and everybody could bring in their ideas, express their own opinions, and the associations could give us their needs. So we don't want to talk specifically about the 3 projects, but we want to talk about the points that are very important to us. It's important to us as well that we need to keep an eye on the finances, as well as the possibility to do this work in phases, and by doing that, divide also the finances, the budget, over various years, so we don't get into debt. The 3 projects are very interesting, and there might have to be some corrections, but they're on the right track to get our village in a nice way. The humans and nature should be in the middle in the center. People should have places to meet and to stay and sit in the shade of a tree on a bench, and children should be able to play with water in a playground. Lots of green areas should give us biodiversity and a nice microclimate, and also bring a good place for insects and other wildlife. Small commerce, restaurants, and a nice local markets should strengthen social contacts and incite people to meet on this place. Soft mobility should have priority. Bicycle paths and pedestrian ways should be well connected. There should be many more parkings for bicycles than for cars. The main road, unfortunately, with the traffic on peak times is not something we can avoid. But a shared space and traffic calming to give more security and priority to pedestrians and cyclists are important. We should stay in a growth of 1.7% maximum, and we should look into alternative forms of living. So there are so many different possibilities, from intergenerational living together, cluster houses that promote social cohesion. It's also important to us that the administration has to be enlarged, as well as the scouts and the Club des Jeunes. And the old fire building, of course, needs to be used. Of course, we have to ask the people involved for their opinions, in the same way that we ask the associations about the Maison de la Culture. When it comes to the Maison de la Culture, it's important that you have to make it the size such that even with growth, it will be continue to be adequate to the needs and not be too small in 10 years down the line. We think it would be important that the old building would be kept, because it's a part of the history of Schuttrange, together with the church and the cemetery. They should harmonically be part of the whole. It's important that the whole project, from the beginning to the end, is sustainable and innovative, where ecology, energy efficiency, rain catchment, and grey water, wastewater management are important. And we hope that this could be done over phases in various years. And we're already looking forward to this, to see a lot of citizens on foot or on their bikes and meet them in the village center and spend time with them. Thank you. Thank you, Nora. So, Claude, now it's up to you. Okay, so we also give our position in written. I've sent it today. We didn't do this in January because we didn't have all the information. We didn't have all the information. Now, of course, the meetings with the committees and the associations, it's very important that this dialogue is still there. We didn't have all those information, and to actually give an opinion on the projects, which is what we've done, it wasn't so important. So I also want to welcome the approach to do this. For us as the LSAP, this was the actual right approach, this participatory approach, and I want to say thank you to the people in the commune responsible for this. If we do a project like this, even if it's just a culture center or the whole urbanistic planning of a village center, then it's clear that not everyone is going to have the same opinion. But that in the framework of this tender, we've done this workshop, or have given a structured framework where there can be a dialogue with all the people who came forward with their opinions. This has made it possible to get those different positions and to reconcile, or at least try to find similar points that we think are important. I think there are a lot of opportunities for a new village center in what we've seen. That said, none of the three projects is perfect to us, and that's why the second phase of this process is important, that the three projects that we kept back on the basis of the questionnaires that we got from the public, and on the basis of what the jury said, and on the basis of what we here this evening keep together, here together decide tonight can be improve the projects. And I'm sure that they will get even better and better respond to our needs. In this context, our opinion on the 3 projects, we'll take them in the... we'll start with the first project. The first project binds the CR 132. It takes it completely into the project in the idea of the shared space. But to get more quality of life for the people living around this road with a calmer traffic, because we know that if we get a slower traffic, we'll have less pollution, we'll have less noise, and we have less risks of accidents. And if there are accidents, they will be less dangerous. So we wonder if, with a road that has that much traffic on it, it will be possible to have these cultural manifestations. Of course, if there is very large manifestations, then maybe the road can be closed, but we can't do that every week. So the volume of this Centre Culturel, we have to realize that there is a lot of potential. So we really can imagine that a building like this will be done in various phases and that it could be extended. I think it's the only project of the 3 that considers this, and this volume has a potential for other potential activities later. Experience shows us that this often happens, that we feel the need to have to enlarge something later on. So we like that in the first project. So this volume would also make it easier to find maybe a restaurant or a bistro inside it, because we think that's a key element for social life on the square. And I'm not talking about the animation that has negative, or activities that have negative impact on the neighbors, but something where people before or after an event can stay together. And there is examples how this works in other communes quite well. And of course, the architecture of this building is maybe not very functional, and there's probably still weaknesses in terms of the charm, and I'm sure there is improvements that could be made. Then this project also looks at a pavilion, which we think would be quite practical. You see that in Remisch when it's raining, and you don't have to start putting lots of tents up, but you can, with the basic equipment, which is always the same, just quickly sell drinks or light restoration and snacks, and that this kind of infrastructure would make that a lot easier. You could also wonder about the consequences of the access to a parking in the allotissement Thomas, and in terms of the nuisances for the neighbors. You have to really ask whether that's optimal. But in general, you could wonder whether the activities of a Maison de la Culture fits with close by housing. It has to stay a calm place of residence where people aren't bothered by the activities of the Maison de la Culture. And what this project does well is put the historical value of the village into the limelight. On the other side, because of this green area, the square is cut in half, and there is a lot of stairs. So it's a bit like the situation that we have at the moment, and whether that's the most optimal solution should be thought through. The same for people with reduced mobility. I think they haven't really been thought of enough in this project, and it's a weakness. And that has to be improved. In terms of the administrative buildings, the extension of the communal administration seems well resolved and oriented to other needs that could come up down the line. It's still a shame that the building where the guichets are at the moment, the desks, would be disappearing because it's been recently refurbished. Of course, we have organizational problems in having two buildings at the time, but and we might just need a better concept that includes dismantling something that's been recently done up. When it comes for the Club de Jeunes, who stays in its place, and the scouts into the old fire brigade that use a common outside area, well, we think it's well resolved. We've heard this evening that some people might not agree of the members, but at least on the plan it looks like a well-resolved issue. And maybe for the scouts, they can really just have their area that are specifically for scouting. What we quite like is the park around the church path. So that the natural the natural history we have in value there, and in terms of the trees, the fruit trees, would stay. We do have not enough short-term parking, which we still think is important for the commerces that are around this square, and also the liberal professions where people can stop for a short time or with their car are very important. And I think in general we really do need to look whether there is enough parking, because if the soft mobility is going to increase and more people come with their bikes and on foot, then many of the visitors will continue to come with their cars, and we don't want chaotic situations, so we think it's important to have enough parking. Then I would come to the second project. A strong point of this project is the binomial of the Belvedere and the parking spaces. It's a project which is important to us, gives a platform to really take advantage of the Zierdal, a place that has a creative importance. But we think that the urban planning of this place isn't really completely well thought through, and it seems too small. So for us, it's important that we say again that it's important this project becomes a lively place where you can have things from markets to barbecue celebrations that could be able to be held in this space. The terrace near the Centre Culturel is, of course, a really nice way in and allows for the integration of a restaurant, which we think is important to boost the lively, making it lively. It's important that we are careful that we won't be able to enlarge this square later on. So the music. The question is whether the music will associations will still find their rehearsal space, or whether we have to create something new for them. It all has advantages or disadvantages in including it or putting it in a different place if the house isn't big enough. It seems important to us that the Club des Jeunes, and it's been talked about a few times tonight, stays in a building and in their ambience that they have now. We don't think they would be well put in the administration building, and we think it's important to kind of keep them into a type chalet, just like they have it now. And just like in the first project, it's important to think that all the people who have reduced mobility, that they are given solutions. What's nice in this project is that the two orchards with nut trees are part of it, and the integration of the housing seems quite well resolved, but there are a lot of housing units, and the municipality owns these buildings, but the question is whether we'll need other partners, and partly private partners, to do this project, this housing project. And there we also have, and even if housing seems compatible with other housing, it's still important to think of whether there is negative factors for the residential areas that are currently existing next to where these would be built. Our 1.7% growth, the question here is whether that's not too big, and I think Gilles has said this many times. The same is true for the social housing, which is something very important to us, because we think there is a certain mixity which is important in different types of housing. So it has to be respected in this project. The Maison Médicale is on the CR 132, and we were thinking that it might be in a better place, in a more traffic calm place, because of course the Maison Médicale, there will be a lot of toing and froing, and if you have to drive out onto this main road, you will know that it's quite difficult, and we already have this situation where the church is, which is of course true again because there is not enough parking there, so that's something that needs to be considered. The question is also whether the trees that are around the street, if they will be enough to calm the traffic, or whether other measures need to be part of this. And in this project, we think the number of parkings is high and should be enough. As a last point for this project, of some commemoration place is in a good, or needs to be rethought. It's important to see if the Centre Culturel has enough square meters, and the Centre Culturel allows the place to be integrated. I think we're talking about the third project now. In this project, it seems that the combination of wood and glass in terms of architecture is a good solution. It looks quite nice on the picture. The idea of the kiosk is something nice. because it gives an ambience of celebration, and it's something that attracts. Of course, the kiosk might be in the way also for certain manifestations, so we have to really think through the utility of the kiosk. The parking is large in this project, but the entrance for pedestrians is in the middle of the square, and it kind of cuts the square in two, which is a shame. And the entrance for the underground parking is also might be a bit of a hindrance, because it looks like it has a quite deep ramp, and we know that this in the winter can cause problems. And then we have a similar problem with the main road, that it drives out onto the main road, and we think it might be difficult that if you come out of that parking, it might be hard to integrate into the traffic on the main road. There is a nice parking for the bicycles, which we think is a very good idea, but it's lying a little bit further out, and maybe it should have a more central space. In terms of extending the communal administration, we don't think it's very functional. The concept for us, we couldn't quite understand the concept of it. And we think it needs to be looked into again. And the main motive should be to have a functional building which is service-oriented. The youth club in the old firefighter department seems a good idea, and the volume for the scouts home seems very large. And it looks like they will be very costly projects, and we need more concept for this. What we applaud as the residence for elderly citizens, again, we need to check whether this is possible for the structure to function. And this and further ideas need to be developed further. And we need more details. The projects seem quite good in terms of greenery and the ecological approaches. We think that the green spaces that we have now need to be held in terms of their size. I've said before that green areas can really bring value, and to have a conservation area is important. We think also that to have restaurants will be important, and they can become a central point of the village. To have an interactive social life and to promote an interactive social life. And the true is also for liberal professions and commerces. It's important that the traffic can be calmed and that soft mobility is given priority. These are still the important points that we want to underline. And it shouldn't be housing and maison médicale that have an absolute priority on the cost of the first two objectives. But we are still sure that this is the right way, and that when this process is finished, we will have a master plan which will help the politically responsible actors to give the right guidelines, to develop the center of Schuttrange in terms of the needs and also the opinions of the villagers. Thank you, Claude, for this very detailed opinion. And I would like to ask you, Serge, for the position of the Schuttrange. Yes, thank you. I would like to present you the group of the Schuttrange have worked out together. To begin, the Schuttrange are happy that this urbanistic process is happening in a transparent and participative manner. All our citizens, as well as all our political responsible people, had the opportunity to actively participate from the beginning until now and to express their opinions to the development of our village center. We're also happy that we have a jury which is competent and independent and experts, and also that all local all local political parties are represented in the jury. So three projects were held back that integrated the different needs each in their own way. They all have strengths and they all have weaknesses. And they will be worked over once again. We don't want to go into detail here, but an important element in the realization of a new urban development are, of course, the financial means of the municipalities, which will determine in which phases these projects can be done. So it's important for us, Schuttrange, that the projects now come up with a budget for each of their projects so that the people responsible in the municipalities can get an idea of the monies involved to implement them. We are aware, of course, that we are in an urbanistic planning from which a master plan should come out, which buildings should happen where in our village. The actual architectural plans come in a second phase with, of course, the future should happen with the future users of these buildings. And they will, of course, have more details on the budget needed. So now we will then have to decide between our needs and the nice-to-haves. We know that the equipment from a cultural center can go from little to very expensive. So the different buildings should be able to be made independent of each other, and the different building phases should not interrupt the actual usage of or work of the different buildings or associations that work within them. We also think that new activities should not be a competition to the current commerces that we have, but rather support them. The traffic is also a very important thing for us. We are aware that we cannot move the traffic out of our municipality, and that traffic is an important element in this urban planning. The 30 kilometers zone to us is a good solution, and it's important that projects with traffic calming measures, think of the fact that this place is on a little hillock that is difficult to oversee from the different directions that cars come from. We think it's interesting to have a car-free area, but that we should have a few short-term parkings for people who just quickly come to get something from the services or commerces or the services that will be developed here, come to visit. Then it's important for us that the soft mobility really gets integrated in the new center. And the three projects are different, but they have good basic ideas. When it comes to the living spaces, the housing, we think it's important to have a mix. The three bureaus should be clear on where they see the housing and what kind of housing and what the mix in this housing will be. When it comes to the realization of the housing, the municipality will have to look at the growth criteria that we've established in the planning, the management plan for the commune. And then we will have to have PAPs, specific plans for the new residential areas. In our plan plus 50, if we should determine in the framework of that we want more housing for older people, then we would like that to also be in the center of our nice municipality. But we think that we are on the right way, and we're happy that as Schuttrange we can, together with our colleagues of the communal council and the other citizens, we were able to give a few comments. But we think that the jury, who has experts from all different backgrounds, that they need to get the right information from all the people involved so that they can make the decisions. In the cahier de charge, in the tender, the candidates, besides the terms and conditions of this tender, what had to be in the project, the bureaus have now heard our opinions, some more details of the music association and the scouts, so that over the summer months they should be able to integrate those into their projects. That's the statement of the group of Schuttrange. A big thank you from our side also, and all the actors who have worked on this project of the new village center so far. Thank you, Serge. I think everybody has now given their position. I think we will send you all the presentation of this evening. It will be on the site. And Gilles, I think you will send us your text. We will put everything that was said here tonight on the site. And also the two reports of the meetings we had with the music and with the scouts. You will get those too. They're quite concise. And then I would propose, as we've said, the jury also gets all those documents, and then it will up to the jury to pass on this information to the different participants. I think we can see that we all picked on the same elements. Some of us went more into detail than others. are a few issues in terms of the budget. It's very clear that Schuttrange doesn't have that we need to know what the things cost. So it will be important to get some ideas of what a project costs, but to give the bureaus a maximum amount, I don't think that would help us. And sometimes people will tell you this is what it's going to cost, and then it'll cost double. So I think we all agree who sit around here what the growth of Schuttrange should be. In certain talks, we've also said that we don't want the center to be completely built up just because we want to do social housing. That's not what this is going to be like. Of course, the communal council is still going to be the one deciding on what's built. We are going through, if we're going to create new quartiers, new residential areas, then we have to follow this up with a PAP and work with public promoters. Of course, we need to be aware that this is not going to be a project that's suddenly going to be built up. I would like to say thank you to everyone. We'll all meet on the 14th. If anybody here around the table still wants to say, we can do that then, and then the jury has all the elements necessary to give it to the 3 candidates to put into their project. And like I said, that's not the last phase, because these 3 projects will come back again, will be presented again to the municipal council, and everybody can then again give their opinion and feedback, and then we ask them to integrate those again. So we want to say a big thank you also to all the people who are looking at us from outside and who've participated up until now, and a nice evening to you all. Thank you.